71. What's today's date?
22. Today the
14.
71. What's today's date? Oh.
22. Today the
14.
71. What's Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. This is AMA number 72. It is October 14th, 2021. Very, very special episode today. We are here to investigate, pontificate about, and celebrate my 20 years in Poland. Tomorrow will be exactly 20 years that I've been living here in Poland. 1 year, first year. Well, I'm not going to give away any details. I will be interviewed / interrogated by my co-host today and friend, my new permanent, for the time being, as long as he behaves himself, co-host Rabbi Avi Baumel, and my consigliere, and by the way, a wartime consigliere, COO of the JCC, Sebastian Rudolph. How are you today, gentlemen?
Fantastic. I am back in crack.
I am great. I'm happy to just continue to be in Krakow since I haven't left for a long time. Dzień dobry, everybody.
So here, Agnieszka Gish. I see Benji walking his dog. Benji, we missed you the last couple of weeks. You were not happy with that.
I just got here a couple of days ago. In Israel, it's 20 Celsius degrees warmer, but it's all good. And happy to be here. The plane was packed, by the way. Lots of tourism, a lot of people coming back to do some shopping in Poland. So that's a good sign. Hopefully, we're making traction with COVID.
Yeah, so it's gonna be 20 years of Jonathana, but Avi, how long have you been here coming to Poland?
Oh my gosh.
Enough about you, Avi. I thought the show was about me.
Thank you for asking, Seb. I appreciate that.
We'll get there.
I think it was 2012.
No, I think
13.
Wow.
I think it was the summer of 2012, and then
I think it was the summer of 2013.
Wait, what a summer it was.
We always do this. I just recently looked at it, but I'll have to look at it again. Anyway, it's been 8 years for me, so it's been a long and fascinating experience. But Seb, it's not about me. I don't want to take over all of the spotlight today. You know, today is our day that we get to grill. Interview. Just talk about Jonathan and his remarkable 20 years that you spent here. I can't believe it.
20 years.
20 years in country, as they said in Vietnam.
20 years. That's 5 years longer than I've been in Krakow, Jonathan. You've paved the way for me to come.
I found a Krakow made of old stone, and I leave Krakow still made of old stone.
However, just a little brighter, I would say. Just a little brighter.
Why don't we divide this interview like you do in all of your interviews in 71 previous, and do it a little bit chronologically, so we could talk a little bit about the pre-Krakow phase, and then we can spend a little more time on the 20 years that you've been here. How does that sound?
It sounds excellent. I just want a little shout out to Sita, who's taking care of my dad. Hi, Dad. I know that you've, for the last 20 years, you think that I'm only here working for the Mossad, but I've managed to do some other things. The Mossad gives me plenty of free time to also run a Jewish community center.
Okay, let's talk about Queens, Forest Hills, growing up, being a Jew in New York, being a young kid. What it was like? What are the defining things that you take with you as you start your journey in life?
You know, with my dad watching, do you really want to ask me that question?
What are the positive Jewish aspects that you gleaned from your early childhood? Because obviously you took some with you. After all, you spent your entire life in working for Jewish life. So there must have been some positive aspects that you need to peel back and explore.
I learned that Jewish holidays, you get extra holidays off from school.
Okay, there we go. We're starting.
This was good. No, I think that listen, there are different ways of learning. One can learn by emulating behavior, and one can learn by doing the opposite of what one observes. My education has been a mix of both. There's been a lot of emulation, and there's been quite a lot of, oh, these terrible things happen to me, and I'll make sure that they don't happen to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken about that a lot, okay? In your own house, and you had, a certain aspect that you weren't ready to accept. But forget about that. What about a general Jew growing up in New York? That must have had shaped your outlook and your identity.
As a Jew growing up in New York, my identity, I feel that I didn't understand what it meant to be Jewish until I was in places that didn't have many Jews, like Poland. So of course it formed my identity. I feel like a New Yorker, and I think it's more the case though that I feel like a New Yorker, and New York is a very Jewish place. So it's less the Jewish aspect in New York, just because I think Jewish is, the Jewish aspect permeates New York, and I think that my worldview is very much that of a New Yorker, which by being very Jewish, it becomes that.
And when you were growing up in New York and doing all these things, what was the Holocaust and what was Poland and what was that experience for you? Like, what did it mean?
Poland, I tell you what, I think the first time that I ever, not heard of Poland, but Poland to me was absolutely a place that was of the Holocaust. I remember, I didn't have any positive connotations with Poland. I didn't think about it any place except a place of anti-Semitism, a place that Jews were killed, and a place that some Jews were lucky enough to escape from. I had no idea whatsoever that there was any Jewish life in Poland. And I remember it was funny, once when I'd moved to Poland already, moving forward a few years, I was visiting my dad in his apartment building where I grew up in Queens, where he still lives. There were some people who, I met some of the older people, in the elevator, and was telling them what I do and where I live. And they were like, oh my God, don't go back there. Don't go back there. Because of course they were Holocaust survivors and their memory of Poland was what it was. So I think that's what sort of permeated, and still to a large degree permeates, the Jewish world. So I had no insight into Poland, even until I met Polish women in Israel and was moving here. I never thought about, if you would have told me how many Jews do I think live in Poland, I would have probably said 0.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to ask about that, if I may, because you just mentioned like meeting the Polish woman and moving to Poland. Like, what was your initial thought when the idea came up? You were living in Israel in the middle of the desert, and then suddenly the idea of coming to Poland, which, as you said, you had a certain preconceptions about. Like, what came through your mind when you first heard of that as an opportunity for you? Well, opportunity might be.
I mean, I guess a lot of life is timing as well. So I was at a point where I was trying to decide, should I stay on the kibbutz? Should I move to Tel Aviv? What should I do? And and it just seemed like a bit of an adventure. I didn't know too much about it. I guess I was very strongly influenced by the desire to continue being with the woman that I'd met and that I was seeing at the time. So I thought, I picked up before and moved to Israel, and that was kind of interesting. So I wasn't that tied to Israel in any certain way, or to the kibbutz, and it was at a moment of point in my life where I was thinking of making a change. So I thought that, or I was able to make a change, and thinking that way. So Poland became I moved to Poland. I think what was interesting for me is that moving there, I'd never visited, moving here. Right. So normally, and I guess the world was it wasn't so easy, especially to travel between Poland and Israel at that point. But I mean, certainly the idea of saying that you're moving someplace in Europe from Israel and never even visited before you move there is something today that sounds completely insane, I think.
Jonathan, how many years were you in Israel?
I was in Israel for seven years, seven and a half.
What do you think would your life have been like had you stayed in Israel? Who would you be today?
It's impossible to.
Do you think you would have found your way to Jewish nonprofit?
No.
Do you think that that's where your heart? No.
No. Oh no.
So
No.
you end up in Poland, and then the world opens for you, and then you just.
So
ended up in Poland, and I ripped the world open to be part of it. I don't know. The world opened for me. It's not. It sounds like
I'm saying the Jewish nonprofit world. I mean, you weren't thinking about it, and then and you became who you are. It's amazing.
Things happen. I don't know. It's amazing. I certainly wasn't something. It wasn't something that I'd ever thought about doing. I think what's interesting that I always tell people is that growing up, I wasn't because of my complicated relationship with my Jewish identity. I wasn't running to be involved in things, right? Like the normal JCC director or federation person or all this, or was this super engaged person his whole life, and this is like a natural outgrowth of that. And I think my path is a very, very different path, which also touches upon what you said, we were talking about in the beginning, which is, I think that certain things pushed me away from Judaism when I was young, and I'm mindful to prevent that from happening to others.
So actually, and something that somebody asked, because I asked around about questions that people might have to you about your moving to Poland. So when you came to Poland, initially, did it make you feel a little bit more Jewish? Because like you were like, you were in a place initially, not living in Krakow, living in Łódź, that didn't have a lot of Jews. Like, did it make you feel more Jewish or less Jewish?
Moving to Poland, I felt like there was a giant neon flashing Jewish star on my head all the time. And walking down the street, I felt like everybody knew that I was Jewish and just got off a plane from Israel. And it was very, no question about it. It was for the first time, or one of the first times in my life, that I really felt different, and that the way I was different was part of it. Would in another place it might have been an American. Had I been in a place that was without many foreigners, the American aspect would have been. But I think because of the nature of Polish Jewish history, then the thing that I was very mindful of was being Jewish.
So actually,
Seb?
So actually, when you first came to Poland, you didn't initially come to Krakow, you went to Łódź. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that might have, I remember growing up in Poland in 2001, when you came here, Łódź didn't have the best of opinions. So how was that?
Oh, so I didn't know too much about Łódź. I'd never heard of Łódź. I mean, I guess when people were like Lodz, I guess I'd realized that I'd seen it written, like Lodz ghetto, something in that context. But I hadn't really heard of it. Or know too much about it, but the Kinga, the woman that I was with, was from there and was finishing her studies. So we moved. That's where it moved to. I remember very clearly getting off the plane in Warsaw, and she met me at the airport, and we went to the train station. And I remember getting on a train, and it was like the trains these days, we have the Pendolino, these beautiful modern trains. That's not exactly what the train looked like in
2001 Polish trains. Yeah.
From Warsaw to Łódź, not even to Krakow, Warsaw to Łódź in 2001, October 15th. And we got on the train, and I remember we're taking the train, and you had those closed, it wasn't the open trains, the closed compartments, which I thought was strange to begin with, but okay. And then we're on the train, and we're going for, 45 minutes or something. And then the train stops. I'm like, okay, the train stops, and it's like, maybe 30 seconds, a minute and a half go by, and I'm like, there's no announcement. In other words, it wasn't strange to me that this train stopped. It was strange to me that this train stopped, and it seemed like that was a normal thing, like it was supposed to stop. But it was dark. We were in the middle of, just open farmland or a forest, or in my mind, it was a forest, just because I started to think dark thoughts. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a Jew in Poland on a train. I don't know anybody. I don't know anything. Don't know the language. I don't know what's going on. And this train is just not moving, and nobody's making an announcement about it. And I remember that was my first, like, what the hell am I doing here moment. But the train continued. and we got to Łódź, and I remember straight away seeing the graffiti and being somewhat like shocked. Even at the train station, there was a lot of graffiti. 2001 Łódź. And I'll
But
say
you didn't speak Polish at the time.
I didn't speak Polish, but one can sort of figure things out. And then, but I remember the first memories I have is that we went to her father's block, to the building where he lived. We were going to stay with her father. We had an apartment that we were going to stay in, but the first night, for whatever reason, the first few days we stayed with her father, and it was in a big building in the center of Łódź. And we went there, and I remember we start pressing the button for the elevator. It's very old, but I guess the building was from the 60s, probably 60s, 70s maybe. And the elevator was like an old looking elevator. And we're pressing the button, the elevator doesn't come. And I'm looking up and I don't see the numbers moving, if there were even numbers, or, there was no indication to me that anything was happening. And I said, oh no, the elevator is broken, I guess. And she said, no, 1 second. And she goes, I have to do something. And she just goes and runs up the stairs, goes in the stairs, runs up the stairs, and comes back a few minutes later. And I was like, what was that? Where'd you go? She goes, no, somebody didn't shut the door. So I didn't understand. I was like, what? She's like, yes, if people don't shut the door on a given floor, then the elevator doesn't run because it's dangerous. So it's like the running of the elevator was dependent on each person shutting the door on each floor. I was like, what? Like, and not that it's such a big deal, but like, I don't know, like, I guess I was really naive or not well traveled or seen the world or been to these places. But I was like, oh my God, the elevators need somebody to shut the door. What's going on here?
To me as a Polish person, the most sad thing is that, like, to me, it's surprising that you were surprised about the train stopping, the no announcement, the elevator needing a door shut, because that's what I grew up with. So to me, that's, that's probably Łódź 2021, some places maybe.
Exactly.
So how long do you stay in Łódź, and then how do you make your way back to Krakow?
So in Łódź, I lived, I was here on a tourist visa, which meant I had 3 months. So every 3 months I had to leave the country in the beginning. So I was in Łódź starting in October, and then 3 months later, or within the 3 month period, so at the end of the 3 month period, I had to cross the border and the closest place, or I decided to cross the border in Szczecin, which is the southern border with Czech, border crossing. So we stopped in Krakow, which was not sort of on the way. And I remember that Kinga, my ex-girlfriend, had her aunt was a professor here at the university, and we stopped by to see them and said, told her what was going on, who I was, and she met me, and she said, oh, you're from Israel, do you speak Hebrew? I said, yes. She goes, oh, well, I'm sure the Jewish Studies department needs somebody to teach Hebrew. I was like, Jewish Studies department? Like, what? Oh, great. So she called the professor, the head of the Jewish Studies department, like she was an important person. Like the next day I had an interview, and he goes, yes, we'd love to think about hiring you for next year. And I said, wow, that's amazing. He's like, you're a native speaker? I'm like, sure. Native speaker. My Hebrew was pretty good. It's much worse these days, but I'd been living in Israel. I've been in the army, and, living not in an English speaking environment. So my Hebrew and accent and everything were pretty good. So starting within, I didn't know at that moment I'd be hired or anything, but I think that very much helped me in Łódź, because 4 or 5 months into my time in Łódź, I had an idea that the next year I'd be moving to Krakow. And I'll tell you that to this day, 20 years later or 19 years later, I still appreciate Krakow all the more for having lived that first year in Łódź. Just because, Krakow, I came here and straight away I was like, oh, it's beautiful and it seemed worldly. And there were people that were like tourists and people speaking English. And, I felt, oh my God, this place is a much better fit for me than Łódź. So in October, the following fall, we moved to Krakow. And I started teaching at the university in October 2002.
So yeah, teaching at, you mentioned the Jewish Studies department. So, a New Yorker, Israeli comes to Krakow and finds himself working at the Jewish Studies department, which I think must have been a mind-boggling to you, because like, I guess you didn't expect there was a Jewish Studies department in Krakow back then. Like, what was your experience with that? Who were the people you were teaching? Like, what was that about?
Yeah, I didn't understand what was going on exactly. So I came in there and I'm like, okay, you're all students. First of all, the system, like you get 5 years to go through. You generally don't split it up like 4 years and whatever. So 3 years. So I was like, okay, these students are all they want to, study Jewish studies. They're studying Hebrew and Yiddish. And I was like, oh, so my assumption was that they're Jewish or generally. And they're like, oh, are you Jewish? And they're like, no, none of us are Jewish. I was like, what? Like, who are you people? Like, what? I don't understand. What are you doing? Like, you're in Poland, this place that my experience up till now has been Łódź, where it was not the friendliest, most welcoming place for Jews. And then I come to Krakow and there are all these incredibly bright young people, a lot of them, 100, 150 of them at all different levels who had to take an exam and all this to study Jewish studies. And they can't wait to hear anything about Hebrew, to learn anything about Israel or Hebrew or Yiddish and all of these things. And they didn't really know any Jews. It was just bizarre to me. It took me forever to wrap my head around it, but that really is something that's stayed with me today, which is that one of the more surprising elements, and Avi and Sebastian, we talk about this stuff all the time, about the non-Jewish interest in everything Jewish. And that really something that I absolutely was shocked by in the beginning.
Jonathan, you spoke Hebrew, but how did you know how to teach Hebrew? Did you read a book? Was there the internet? I don't understand. Like, you became a Hebrew teacher
on a college level. I got some books. On how to do it. No, I had no idea what I was doing, but I'll tell you something funny. Because, you always have some students that are like really smart and like really start to get advanced in something. And they come in with some question that you don't know the answer to. They'd be like, oh, how do you say, pumpernickel, this and that? And I'd be like, listen, I could tell you, but it's better for the way the linear progression of your studies for you not, if you understand that, I was like, leave that for now. And I was like, oh, sure, you can ask me how to say something. I had no idea what I was doing. You
didn't have a phone that you could say 1 second and then just.
No, there was no iPhone, right? No, it wasn't. I could cough and pretend not. But listen, there are two things that I realized. One, of course, in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. And also that you just have to stay one step ahead of them. Right. So I would just make sure that and they would ask me questions. I was like, no, we're only focusing on today's lesson. We're only talking about this pa'al and pi'il and hit pa'el and all that. I focused on that, but I had no idea. I'd done like one ulpan, right? It's not like I had some background in philology. I had no idea what I'm talking about. I don't speak a bunch of languages. I can't believe that they hired me. And I can't believe that I stayed employed for 7 years at the university, to be honest.
Because they had no idea whether you were doing a good job.
No, well, I mean, the students seemed happy. They were learning Hebrew. I was very tough. That was the thing. Okay, the other thing that shocked me when I got here is that everybody cheats on everything. The students,
that's
it's
everywhere.
Acceptable. You're allowed to cheat. I was like, what? I was like, listen to me. Don't get me wrong that I've never cheated on anything in my life. I certainly have cheated. But like, to me, it's cheating. It's like robbing a bank. You're going to go rob the bank. But if you get caught, you're going to go to jail or get, whatever the punishment is going to be. But they were like cheating and expect, like, as if it was okay. Like they'd all, oh, I'm like, why are you looking at this paper? They're like, what do you mean? That's what we all do. I'm like, no. So I was like this complete hard. I mean, I was fun teacher, as you would imagine. I wasn't so serious and joking around and teaching them songs. And I would teach them about Israel and show them films that I took, home movies from the army and stuff, just whatever. Because I realized that they wanted they were fascinated in everything Jewish when there were no Jews around, and then none of them had gone to Israel. So I was in that aspect. But in terms of the cheating was something that I just couldn't stand. I said, this is a bad life lesson. There have to be penalties if you do things. I was like, you guys, if you want to cheat and whatever. But if I catch you, I'm going to fail you and you're going to repeat the year. And I said to you, trust me, none of you are sneakier than I am. So not very good strategy for you to do it. Whatever you're going to think of, I'm 3 steps ahead of you. You know what I made them do? I would make them write down who they were sitting next to. Like I sat next to Pavel and across from Monica. And then it was that I would check their exams against each other.
In the history of the Jewish Studies Department, there was one crazy aberration where they all had to follow these crazy Jonathan rules, and then everyone else.
That's right.
Have you actually failed anybody?
Yes.
Wow.
People had to repeat the year. I was very tough. I just didn't like the arrogance of saying, oh, we're allowed. I was like, you can cheat, but just don't expect that it's okay that you can cheat.
Did students come up to you later, years later, and say, you know what, thank you very much, you taught me a valuable life lesson, or they're like, you were the
No.
worst?
There's a woman I know. There's a woman that lives near here around, and it was a whole thing, and it was like a political thing, and the parent was connected to the university and something, or whatever, and I failed her or whatever, and they tried to put pressure on me not to, and I was like, no, and I still see her, and she still turns her head when I see her walking down the street. And it makes me smile, huge smile every time.
Oh, okay. So you've been teaching for what, a few years, right?
I was teaching all together. I mean, there was overlap between my last year of teaching and the JCC opening, which is being open, which is crazy to me to think of that. I was like stopping everything and going to teach my Hebrew class, but I did.
When you were teaching, you heard about this idea that the JCC, you heard this story, right? How did you hear the story?
So I'll tell you, I was at a Thanksgiving dinner in 2006 or five or six. And a friend of mine who was an American who since has left, but she ran a bookstore with her husband. He's still here running the bookstore, a place called Massalit. And we were I was at their house for Thanksgiving, and she said, oh, they're building this JCC. And I was like, what? Well, why would they do that? And I was involved with the community a little bit. I was teaching English to the survivors, and I was teaching some Hebrew to the young people. So it wasn't like I had no contact with the Jews in Krakow. I did. And still, I remember very clearly saying, whatever they're going to spend on that building, a few $1 million, I'm sure, they should just take that money, divide it up, and give the money to the survivors, and let them all go retire to Hawaii instead of sitting here in Krakow. That was my initial reaction to hearing they were building a JCC in Krakow.
So had that happened, you would have not met a few interesting people. And actually, do you remember meeting people like, I don't know, Pani Zosia, Pani Małgosia for the first time, kind of like getting to interact with the local Jewish community, even before the JC opened?
So I do. It was somewhat random, but just finishing about the thing. And I was like, I had no desire to apply, nothing about the job. And my friend was like, you're the one, you need to run the JCC. And she forced me, and she said, oh, send your essay. Let me see your cover. Like, she every day was pestering me about it. And then I applied because of my friend Karen.
Do you remember your essay?
What I wrote, my cover,
Mm-hmm.
I have it somewhere. I mean, I don't remember. It wasn't something. It was just kind of saying why I want the job. I feel like my interaction here with the Jewish Studies Department and my Jewish background and being in the army and my being connected to the Jewish world in this way, blah, 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 something like that. And I guess the other candidates weren't that strong. But I do remember, but Sebastian asked me about meeting people. So I remember once I was in the, I was with somebody, a friend of a friend of a friend, somebody who was a Jewish guy from Zakopane, who recently passed away. He was 90, but we were in Krakow, and he brought me to see Jewish Krakow a little bit. And he brought me to the cemetery, and Pani Zosha was there. And he introduced me to this woman, and it was Pani Zosha. And I said, oh, what an honor to meet you. And she doesn't remember the meeting, but I remember that it was Pani Zosha. And this was it was way before the J. It must have been like 2002 or 3.
Wow.
Jonathan, at the time, did you go into the synagogue ever? Which synagogue were they praying in? Did you go for Yom Kippur? Did you go to see what was going on?
I did. I was involved here before the JCC was open. I would go sometimes. The synagogue was the Ramah. It was the Remu that was open. I did go, and I was involved a little bit with the community. As I said, I was teaching English to the seniors, to the survivors, and then all the seniors were survivors. So you can, and then I was also teaching Hebrew to young people here in the community. And
wow.
yeah, I was involved. Rabbi Pash was here. Boaz was in Krakow after a couple of years. That was 2000. He probably came 2000. I don't know, 3, 4 in there somewhere. So yeah, there was some stuff going on, and I was involved a little bit. Yeah.
So you went to their interview. They obviously hired you.
Multiple. It took a while. It was a bunch of interviews, and they, yeah, it was a long process.
So well, you were the first person they hired, correct?
Well, what does that mean? The first.
I mean, like you were the first JCC employee.
Yeah, of course. There was no JCC, so I was the JCC. Yeah.
So you were hired, and the building is complete.
The building wasn't complete. Building not complete yet.
So did you have a say in how you wanted the building to be completed?
I had my say only in one element of the building before we opened.
What was that?
because everything was already planned, even if it wasn't fully built, it wasn't like I could like change the brick color or anything like that. You got to understand, I had no idea what was going on and no idea what I was doing. And until the JCC opened, the only thing I was focused on was getting the building open, right? Prince Charles is coming. It's a whole big event. There's who to invite and dealing with the media. And I had no clue how to do anything. I was zero knowledge, just doing no help, not much help. It was crazy. But the only aspect of the building that they asked me about before it opened is they said, on the bathroom doors, do you want it to be a circle and a triangle, or to say men and women, or like the plus and the thing? That was the only, that was the only thing I had to do with the building. Correct. And I made a terrible choice because I said the triangle and the circle, which nobody knows what it means.
Up to this day, we have it and nobody knows what it means.
Up to this day, 13 years later, I still have to explain to everybody what it was. But that was the only thing I had to do with the building.
Wow.
Of course, since then, I've made some, we put in a kitchen and we put in a gym, and we've made not a million, we made changes. But before the building opened, my input was only the bathroom signs.
And when you first started, they explained to you that the structure of the JCC, that there are 3 partners and there's a board and all these things. This was all new to you, and you were trying to figure out how you were going to navigate with all of these. And did you have people who were helping you to figure out how to run this engine?
I was, I think, shockingly alone. In other words, it sounds strange because you're like, okay, who would give this guy keys to a building and just say, yeah, go ahead. Like, it wasn't clear what I was, what to do. Like, in other words, nobody said teach Hebrew at the JCC. I mean, certain things, it's not true. Certain things were given. In other words, there was a senior club that was operating off premises before. So it was clear that the senior club should move into the JCC. There was a Sunday school going on in Krakow. It was clear that the Sunday school should be in the building. That was it pretty much. I get maybe there were some occasional Shabbat dinners going on, and then we said, oh, we'll bring them into the building. But I think that was it. There was no idea like you have to teach Hebrew, you have to have this, you have to do that. Like, we just kind of made it all up as we went along. So, but I remember, if you sort of, for me, an interesting thing that was what I saw was that I understood that many people were coming to it from the perspective that I had when I'd first heard, that I mentioned. In other words, what the hell is a JCC for? Whose idea is this? Especially because it was Prince Charles and foreign, the English people built the building, the World Jewish Relief came and paid for it. So it was this idea of like, who needs this? What's it necessary for? And who's going to use it? So I was very much in the beginning, I had what was foremost in my mind was that the building needs to be busy. It didn't really matter what was going on at first. We just had to kind of justify the existence of the building. Of course, it's good to have targeted, helpful, useful programming. But again, we didn't plan anything. The day after Prince Charles left, I went to go to the company to go turn the phones on and stuff. We had no logo. We had no website. It was done exactly the opposite way. If we were going to plan something, you would have all this doing, and then you'd open the building. We opened the building and then figured out everything afterwards. But I knew straight away that there was not going to be any excuses that if 2 days and 3 days after Prince Charles left, if that building didn't seem busy, everybody was going to say, it's a silly thing, and just because of Prince Charles. So I just did everything I could straight away to get the building busy.
So what were your first things that you did?
I think straight away I understood this idea, 1, of being busy, 2, that if everything was sort of death and destruction, that I had to go. So we had one of the first things that was going on in the JCC was belly dance. Right? Like, who cares? Like, who needs belly? Like, there wasn't some huge interest. It was just like, oh, I thought that was something that was surprising and shocking and do something. But it was more like, I knew somebody who was a belly dance instructor. I was like, hey, come do that in the building. Or there was somebody doing that. I was like, yeah, sure. You want to do that? You ultimate Frisbee? Yeah, have a club. So just kind of anything, just this idea of getting the building, getting a buzz around the building, getting people in the building. And then sort of later on, obviously that changes, you develop as an institution. But, I felt it was a bit like a sink or swim situation because of the expectations and the skepticism that we opened, and we opened with no planning. In other words, now I'm sort of like, when I joke with the people from like, well, Jerusalem, I was like, what were you guys thinking? Like, nobody, like, let me do that. Like, it could have gone a lot of different ways, let's say.
We probably shouldn't send that episode over to them, should we? So what were the, like,
when you had the senior club, so they were an established group that was sitting there, and maybe you went over to them and you said, hey, maybe bring your children or your grandchildren, and then you kind of got a blank face or something. How was that experience?
So the seniors I knew a little bit better than others in the community, right? Remember, I was teaching them English, and it was like a thing. So for a couple of years, so the seniors I kind of knew a little bit. Yeah, it was a thing. You know, I think what's helpful in a society like Poland, which is a little more formal than the United States, let's say, right? You still have the formal part of the language, and there's this distance and certain expectations. Then being an American was very helpful, right? Being a foreigner, because you can get away with a lot more, right? So if you're a Polish and you would say, hey, bring your grandson to the, you know, they could be insulted by it, right? But like in the beginning, I was just like, Jonathan's very open. He's American. That's what he, you know, that's what he does. So I think I had a lot of leeway with that. But yeah, exactly. It was like, hey, let's get people involved. Let's do this. And you know, being naive, not coming to things without knowing too much about it. If you can pick things up fast enough and be perceptive, is not a bad place to start, really.
Jonathan, one of the hallmarks of people the visitors who come to the JCC is this Friday night dinner. When did that emerge? Because it's a very, very important aspect of people's trip here.
So we didn't have a kitchen at first. So we had some outside caterers that were doing the Shabbat dinner, and it was like it was fine, but it wasn't what it needed to be. And I understood that would be a tremendous growth area for us, and that groups could eat with us, and that everything is about food, and that, you know, people bond over food, cultures, societies, people bond over food. So we made a big push to get a kitchen in the building. It wasn't so easy. I had to raise the money and all that, but we got the kitchen put in the building. Don't you guys want to ask about other stuff besides JCC stuff? What about my impression of Poland? And
I was gonna move us on, because like we all know, and the Prince Charles story and everything.
Yeah, JCC.
All been and done that. Yeah, actually, so again, I had some people, I reached out to some people and asked for their questions. So
did
like,
you really do that, or are you pretending that you did?
I actually did that.
Oh, I saw it.
I can't blame you, Sebastian.
I actually did that, or maybe I'm just making it up and
Maybe.
my ass. So like, so you know, you come to Poland, you've been, you know, lived in the woods, moved to Krakow, decided to be a JC director. What were like your, you know, people back in Israel and America? What they were thinking? What they were telling you? They were like thinking that you just like lost your mind and like decided to stay here, or they were like, oh, that's interesting. Do you remember that?
I think the lost my mind moment was about moving here more than staying. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I'm picking up and moving. You know, I joke with my dad that he never understood what I was doing in Poland, which is, you know, it's not really joking. Yeah, these days it's years and years later, but absolutely. I think that it was very surprising to people when I would speak, especially, you know, to Israelis, friends from the army or whatever, moving to Poland. They're like, what's wrong with you? Like, when are you getting that out of your system and coming back to Israel where you belong? I think that was very much like, yeah, haha, you know, as if I think that it was seen as if I was doing my year after the army in India, or 2 years in Vietnam and Thailand and something. That it was like that, right? Like, oh, haha, you're in Poland and you're sticking there a little bit longer than other people, but you'll just come back and come to Israel, because who in their right mind? First of all, it's not like just an Israeli. I'm coming from New York and going to Israel. People, even the Israelis, didn't understand why I came from New York in the first place. You know, if you're coming to Israel from a non-religious point of view, in other words, Avi, there's an idea. It's about, you know, this, and it's the you know, the Holy Land and the Promised Land and all that. Like, in my experience, it was different. They're like, you know, if you're around secular Israelis, they're like, you know, half of them are moving somewhere else. So when they're like, oh, I'm coming from New York, and they're like, what? Like, what are you doing? So to move to Poland was very surprising for people, but yeah.
Well, you proved them wrong, I guess, 20 years later. living here.
I still miss the kibbutz. There's a very special place. I love visiting Israel because I love the beach and stuff in Tel Aviv, and I feel it reconnects me to something that I think is an important part of my identity. But like the kibbutz is a very special place in my heart. There's certain places that have a certain meaning for you, and when you walk around, you feel a responsibility for those places. In the same sense, like if I see something on the ground at the JCC, a piece of paper or something, I'll always pick it up outside in the courtyard or something like that. And I could leave here tomorrow and come back 50 years from now, and I'd still pick up that piece of paper. And I think that that's how I see, there aren't so many places that have like that meaning to me. If I sold my apartment tomorrow, that would be that. It would be, I love it and it's great, but like, I don't have that emotional attachment. But I think the kibbutz where I lived was a place that was very, very special to me, and still has a meaning for me like that.
Got it. Well, 20 years later, I guess you've come to be being used to being in Poland a little bit more than when you initially came here. Is there like something in Poland, like something specifically Polish that you think that you couldn't like go on without? Something that you can only find here that you think is now like important to you or essential to you, or something that you like in particular that's particularly Polish?
It's interesting, although I'm here
except Kasia.
I was going to say Kasha, or you saved me there, Sebastian, because had I not immediately said Kasha, of course, Kasha. So, but I think that it's interesting that, I lived in Israel for, 7 years, and I felt pretty Israeli, not fully Israeli, but pretty Israeli. And I've been living here for 20 years and I don't feel that Polish. I feel connected to Krakow, and there are things here that I like, and certain foods that I like, and osipek is something, there are things that I appreciate here. And I love life here, but I don't feel, I'm surprised by the fact that I don't feel more Polish. And I think that traveling as much as I do, and going to the US a lot, and traveling the way that I do, and being around the people that I'm around, and in that sense, I think that it keeps me a little bit, it doesn't, I think because of that, I feel sort of connected more, have something in common with people like coming from a more similar background than I do. Mm-hmm. And I think it surprises me at this point that my wife is Polish. I'm living here for 20 years. I speak the language. I'm a citizen. I vote. I do this. I do that. I can spend days in a row only speaking Polish. But, I don't feel the connection so much to Poland. I do to Krakow as a city, but not really. I don't really feel that Polish, and it surprises me.
Well, I think some people might say that not feeling Polish is very Polish, especially these days, maybe. But so yeah. So that being said,
excuse me. I think also Kasia is not, in many ways. My wife. Kasia is also not. There are many sort of not typically Polish elements of her, but sometimes there are also very many Polish things about her, obviously. But
so speaking to that, like, are there any things like behaviors of Polish people or customs in Poland that like still up to this day just you think they're absurd? All of them is not a good answer.
No, I can tell you things that to me are like just interesting. That Kasia obsessively won't throw out any bread.
Of course, it's bread. You don't throw bread away.
But even wherever we are, we're somewhere else, like in the world, and she'll be like, we were in Greece. And it was like, okay, no, I'll give it to the birds outside in the square. I'm like, well, we don't live here. We're in a hotel. Can't we just throw out this thing from breakfast that we, stole a roll for later or something? No. So this aspect, but I see the logic in it. I don't think there's anything so particularly crazy that people do that is just like bizarre to me. I think that, some of the more formal aspects of, but Poland is changing. The Poland that I live in today, I don't feel is the same Poland that I moved to. People, Poland being part of the EU, Poles traveling and coming back, and Krakow being a city with so much tourism, that is a very non-Polish element to Krakow as well. But I still feel like this idea, I think that there's a pessimism in Poland. There's an idea of the inevitable failure. I don't want to say in that sense, but something inevitably, not failure, but that this sort of waiting for something to go wrong aspect that I think is very Polish. Like, so when is that gonna, oops, that other shoes, say in English, like the shoe is gonna drop. Like, I feel like that's something that I'm I'm not very much like that. I'm sort of very move forward person, and I don't understand exactly how to deal with. I'm closed to sort of negative things a little bit, and that's just my personality, or it is now. So there's sort of like this Polish heaviness of things like, uh-oh, something bad's going to happen, is something that I feel like I'm constantly bumping up against.
Well, you live in Soviet Poland for 50 years, and then you only learn what it means. So,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I get it. I understand the effect that communism had on the country, and I'm coming here not too long after it ended, if I think about it. But yeah, it's definitely, you definitely notice. You notice that. It was only 10 years after communism ended that I came here, right? So it's just different, but it sort of makes me feel, you know what I mean? This like very, I don't know. You feel sometimes the sort of like optimism is very not Polish.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
Jonathan, maybe the idea of this outsider that you've always felt and your attitude of more optimism were helpful, were vital in you in your role in building Jewish life in Krakow and for the success of the Jewish Community Center. You see how, if you were an internal, if you were like a person who was also part of the Polish attitude, it might be more fatalist about what
Fatalistic,
maybe should not have succeeded.
You're right to say fatalistic, not pessimistic is the better word, what I was trying to describe before. Absolutely. I think to say, that you, again, coming into a society, it's much easier from an outsider to make change, right? It's harder to get along and it's harder to fit in, but it's easier to make change. So if the goal is to make change and the goal is to be an agent of change, and our center was created to be an agent of change, then I think having somebody who himself is an outsider is helpful.
How do you view your success in the building Jewish community, building Jewish life here?
You want me to grade myself?
Yeah, for sure.
B-.
I was going for a B+, so I guess that's your. I was going for.
I think there are certain things that certain changes that I would like to see in the community that haven't been affected yet. There are certain things that I see, but I'm admittedly very hard on everybody, myself included. So I will understand if people are like, "Oh no, how can B-?" But you're always probably a harder critic of yourself than you are of others.
What would you consider your greatest achievement so far in terms of building Jewish community, building Jewish life?
I mean, if I'm proud of myself in terms of work, I mean, I would say overall, beyond, there are certain individual things coming up with, I think that the Ride for the Living and Holocaust Survivor Day are the two things that are sort of like ideas that I'm very proud of being part of. But I think that the staff at JCC is probably the thing that I would say, if you want to say, I think that it's an amazing team that we've put together. And I think that's probably the thing. If I wanted to say, hey, I'm good at my job, and I would say I'm good at my job. And the thing that I would want, if I could show you one thing to make that case, I would probably say, take a look at who's working in the JCC and the fact that they're not getting paid all this tons of money and it's whatever. And the people that really believe in what we're doing and are on this mission with us, I would say that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of in terms of in that area.
Seb, you want to respond to that?
Oh, shucks, boss man.
Present company excluded, obviously. That's despite having Seb and you here and stuff.
Is it the sunset or has my face just turned red from blushing? I don't know. Wow. Okay, that's a nice thing to say, Bossman. Thank you. I think that people work here and I appreciate working with you, and you have a committed team of people who just want to make a change. Do you see that?
I think I know. Plus, I know it's not easy. I know I'm not an easy person to work with.
I don't know. Maybe in the future, Monica, your assistant, will be your guest, and we can talk about that a little bit more. So, actually, speaking to that, you've been working with people, with Poles for the past 20 years, like more directly in a team for the past 14 years. Have you seen a change in like people's attitude and like how they work and how kind of like they approach work, like generally, like about their fatalistic attitude? Is that something that you think is shared with the younger people, or like is that changing as we're becoming?
I think those elements that I'm talking about of like particularly Polish aspects of personality or of society are much less than they were, are not as dominant.
Mhm.
I think that the world, the internet and the way and travel, incredibly cheap air travel and instant contact with everybody in the world through our phones has pushed down the differences among people. And I think the average 25-year-old in Poland or in Chicago or in Buenos Aires or anything, if you're a reasonably intelligent, open-minded, liberal person, then you're kind of have a lot more in common than you used to, because people are just more connected and they're being bombarded with ideas from all over the world. And I think that it softens the differentiation between people. So I see a tremendous difference in terms of Polish society and what young people. I remember when I was teaching at the university, I had a lot of contact with young people, and here at the JCC I also do, because most people are pretty young working here. So I see a tremendous, 20 years. But maybe anybody would say that anywhere, right? Maybe an American would say, oh, 20 years ago people were very different. But I think that when you're talking about a society that was pretty closed and then opened up, then the change that's happening there is different than a place like America, which has always been open, or in Western Europe that have been open. So the idea of, I think, if I had to say something about what's great about living in Poland for 20 years, I will say that being in a society where all the young people feel that they have more opportunity than their parents, the energy that gives a society, and being part of that, and that's not my experience, that's their experience, but being around that, of people who are like, wow, I get to travel, and wow, I get to do this, that they're not jaded, that they didn't go on all these amazing vacations as kids. And your life, Sebastian, your life, and you're emblematic of it as somebody who's 34, and what you're able to do in your life and the life that you had versus what your parents were doing at your age is shockingly different. And for me and Avi, not really. Parents also did all the stuff that we're doing, whatever. They didn't have laptops and the rest of it. But besides that, and the energy that somebody like I or Avi gets being in a place of young people seeing a world that's open to them is an incredible thing to be around. And I think that I feed off that. And I think that's, for me, the strongest argument I could make to being in a place that's in a recently changed political system is that one.
Wow. Hope everybody's listening.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Jonathan,
That's cool.
question, and it's bifurcated because the political Poland versus the Jewish community of Poland are two, they go hand in hand, but they're two different worlds. What do you see, what do you want to see, and what do you think will happen in the next 20 years in terms of how Poland's going to, is it, going to continue to be the way it is, or maybe make a shift, and how Jewish life is going to move in a certain direction? What would you like it to be, and what is it going to be?
I would like Poland to stay integrated and to continue integrating into Europe. I don't want Poland to pull away from the EU, whether officially or in any other sense. I want the EU to continue to survive. I think it's been good for Europe. I think a big picture of things. I think that one of the things that I'm always talking about at work is that you should take as broad a view of things as you can. It's in your interest to take a broad view, and it's in our interest to say that the EU has been incredibly helpful and positive for Europe, especially a Europe scarred by war in recent memory should understand that if it does nothing but keeps us from killing each other in Europe, then it's already a good thing. I would hope that Poland would continue on that path, and I would hope that, my goal is very, very simple in terms of work. I feel that I'm been given so much by being Jewish and by being part of the Jewish world, and it makes me sad to think that there are people who could be part of this, who were born into this but were disconnected from it. And I feel that one of the jobs of my life is to try to reach out to as many of those people as possible in Poland, and to give them the opportunity to be part of this Jewish world that you and I have been nurtured by and are immersed in.
Okay, wow. Well, I just got another question. Maybe kind of summing up. If Jonathan from 2021 could talk to the Jonathan in 2001, what advice would you give yourself?
Whoa.
Buy Bitcoin.
You'd be a few years ahead, I guess, but sure.
Invent Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What advice would I give myself?
Yeah.
Stay the course.
Nice. Good. So we all know you're in Poland. These days you can get decent pizza here, but that wasn't necessarily the case when you first came here. So, gun to your head, which of those two typical Polish toppings of pizza would you choose? Pineapple or corn?
Corn.
Corn. Okay.
I will never eat pineapple on pizza. It just seems so wrong to me.
Listen, I'm team corn as well. So listen, you heard.
Corn to me is unnecessary more than bad on pizza. And it's not just like, why bother? But okay, it doesn't bother me.
I do have friends, non-Polish friends, who consider it a travesty to put corn on pizza. So they had to ask.
I don't understand why you put anything on pizza. They did a good job. You got the cheese, you got the tomato sauce and some spice. What are you doing, man? Don't mess with it.
Avi's not wrong here.
Oh, let it be said.
When you live in Soviet Poland, when you have only cheese and ketchup on pizza, then you want toppings. Okay, that's how we do it.
Fair enough.
Okay, Jonathan, your top 3 favorite Polish words.
Oh, my top three favorite Polish words. I like zajebiste.
Uh-oh, I think we're gonna have to censor that one.
Zajebiste means like fucking great. There you go. Zajebiste. I was saying today, I like the word Alphonse.
What is wrong with you?
Alphonse means pimp, but it's like Alphonse, like from the name Alphonse, like Al Capone, Alphonse Capone. I think that's hilarious. Alphonse means pimp. What kind of nutty word is that? Alphonse, Zajebiste, and I like Schlafrock. Schlafrock, it means bathrobe. It's the funniest word. Schlafrock. It's like schleprock or something. Sounds like it's from the Flintstones. Schlafrock. Every time Kasha says Schlafrock, I like piss myself at home. Schlafrock, Zajebiste, and Alphonse. Those are my big 3.
Somewhat they're connected. I would say that you're
interesting.
There might be a connection that might be drawn.
Thank you, Dr. Freud.
I'll charge you. I'll send you a bill later. Avi, any final questions from your end?
Your favorite Polish song?
My favorite. Wait. I have it. I know what it is. It's oh no, it's whatchamacallit. Myslovitz. What's that song from Myslovitz?
Oh my God, which one?
Come on, Sebastian, Myslovitz.
Wait.
Oh yeah. Nawet jeśli będę sam, nie zmienię się. Na. Myslovitz, no?
Yeah.
That's that one. Or maybe Baw mnie. Daj mi ten noc. Oh no, I like BAME. No, isn't it BAME? I like this Białe żołnierze. Anyway, people don't know what I'm saying that I'm watching. There's a few songs.
I gotta say that the pineapple versus corn stirred quite a discussion in the comments section.
Wow.
Nobody ever needs to put either of them on their pizza. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, just looking through. Długość dźwięku samotności. That's the name of the song. Thank you, Moni Elliott, for.
Exactly. That's such a good song. I saw them in concert. I went to a Myslovitz concert.
Oh my God, you at a Myslovitz concert. I'd pay money to see you at a Myslovitz concert.
I like Cora. What's her name? Cora?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Cora. And Myslovitz.
All right.
I have to say that I don't know enough Polish music or Polish cinema or Polish theater, Polish literature as well. Lately, not as much. When I was teaching, I had more time to read than I do now. But I was saying the other day, my favorite Polish book which is available in English. It's a great book, which is Madame by Anthony Libera.
Hope
Okay.
everybody's taking notes.
There we go.
Absolutely.
Well-
I'm going to go out and get it.
Jonathan, it's been a hell of a ride this past 20 years.
20 years tomorrow. By the way,
20
also it's National Bosses Day.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's
So
been
you
a
guys-
hell of a 8 years for me working with you, and it's been a wonderful ride, an interesting ride, challenging ride, but a fun ride as well. And I'm looking forward to many years to come.
Indeed, I share that sentiment for the past, 11 years that we shared. So I'm glad that I've now also been part of more than half of your time here in Poland.
As they say in church, Rabbi, Amen.
Amen. Okay, folks. I think we're wrapping
All
up.
right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
We'll see you
guys.
next week. Bye.